Glad you're here. Glad you're here. Okie dokie. Well, you know, almost in spite of myself, it's Tuesday. The day that time forgot. Wait a minute, what did I do? Sorry. Poetry break. I left the fireworks in the other studio again. Well, there's a safe spot over there that I've always put them so that I always know where to find them, and they're not going to fall, get walked on, you know, the kinds of things that could be damaging to the very expensive special effects that we use here in the poetry break. You know, it used to be that Henry was young enough to be impressed by something like this. Now Henry's running circles around us. Henry. It's nice to know that the next generation is ready to step in and kick these geezers out of the way and say, okay, time for some real entertainment now, people. We have a jam-packed show for you this week, folks, and I don't want to waste any time. But I did want to say, I got like 4 things sent to the email, poetrybreak22@gmail.com. Got like 4 things sent this afternoon. And I got to say, you know, I'm happy to have them. I will get to all that stuff, but I kind of already had today's presentation it had already kind of taken shape in my mind. That usually happens late Monday or early Tuesday. And once it's done, I don't want to mess with it because it's, you know. Scott Higgins. Hey there, dude. All right. Stefan, Scott, Holly, Rick, Cindy. Boom. We're here. So we're going to start tonight with Oldmanhood. We're going to start with Oldmanhood because I have to think that the reasoning behind that is that then people will forget about the Oldmanhood when I start reading the real stuff later on, and they'll think, wow, that's a really good show last night. What did he start with? I can't remember. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Remember, Oldmanhood is a work in progress. These are, for the most part, first drafts, and I'm just pleased to be writing. For some reason, my hands don't hurt when I use the typewriter. Don't ask me. I have no idea. It's a mystery. It continues to be a mystery. We still don't know what the deal is. Finn Livingston, Aaron Ochoa. Welcome, you guys. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. I know the weather's nice outside. I could be out there, you know, in my Speedo, frightening away the populace, the general, being arrested for several things. But no, I choose to be holed up in here with you guys, with the rest of the culture vultures. That's right. There are lots of young doctors who live just outside of Oldmanhood. They say it's for the property prices, but we all know it's for the customer base. Don't get me wrong, these aren't quacks who move in to take advantage of the gullible oldies. These are top-notch docs who know their shit. They want to help, and do. They're not pill doctors. They're practice doctors who want to participate in the ongoing wellness of their patients. It's a treat and advise kind of thing. So you got to be on board with that. These aren't auto mechanics. They're team players. That's why I appreciate them so much. They know that the only way for me to stay healthy is if I take responsibility for it myself. So they do something, then tell me what they did and what I can do back home to keep it done, so that if I come back with it undone, they give me sideways looks. Getting caught out once or twice is enough. I'm smarter than them because I've been around longer, so to have some young kid giving me sideways looks is fucking embarrassing. Sorry. It's a pleasure to be on board with young, sharp, strong experts helping me back toward the ground. It's where they're headed to, though I selfishly avoid that topic. Oldmanhood, going in some interesting directions. I'm watching everything that happens. Oldmanhood opens like a blossom before me, trembling with each stamen to call the sticky-legged bee. I've tested the plumpness of each stem and root. I've watched the river go down into the thirsty earth. It has been a June of rivulets, a June of flashing green with purple and yellow flowers fetched from Eve's bedroom. Every block I walk is a Bible of sights. In my window I watch. Leaves trickle down, their cups overflowing, their porches purified. They escort the rain to their roots like seed scatterers, growing corn enough for the whole community. I'm watching the hearings, too. Oldmanhood offers us the cyclical view. We've heard these stories before, more outlandish with each retelling, the characters swollen to absurd balloons of self-loathing, each generation more isolated from truth than the one before, and each convinced that real winners live in gardens of brainless women and other bitter fictions that burn them till they squeal like pigs. My hands are a hot topic. Tools forged from defective ore, wrought by drunken metal workers the day before they walked out for higher wages, bull whips and brass knuckles. It was the 50s. You were either gray flannel fedora or working poor. Blue collars were prettier, but sweat stained them with rust and steel was cheap. My hands are tear-stained, pulled from their shoulders and disconnected from the central engine of movement and use. Work is painful, the pen cold and barbed, angry at its predicament, smoldering in its private nerves. Another specialist, another test, another condition crossed from the long list of insurance codes. Hey, Theo. We're right in the middle of Oldmanhood here. Okay, now I was reading, I spent part of this week reading The Kingfisher by Amy Clampett. Has anybody read any Amy Clampett? I've had The Kingfisher on my shelf for 20 years, and I'd bring it down once in a while. No, I'm not ready for Amy Clampett yet. Put it back. And it's really starting to speak to me now, but I'm still like, I feel like there's a crust there that I have not broken through yet. I'm looking for the interior of these poems, and I'm not sure how much of it's actually there. So I'm still working on Amy Clampett. But I wrote this after I had been reading Amy Clampett for a couple of hours. I said this: it's as if she walked along the beach and wrote a poem for every sighting. Sea mouse, beach glass, marine surface, low overcast. You get the idea, but how are these poems so good? She saw surfaces and interiors I've not seen in all my walkings. So, more gifted with sight or words, or just happy with description, satisfied by outward things. How did she feel about it all? Perched at her small desk, surrounded by her words, revealing nothing. Did she ever undress? Or was she always naked, skipping stones into the fog, answering the horn with a bare-breasted bawl? The poems won't give her up, and I guess that's magic. Who knows? 7 stitches in my right arm to ward off melanoma. Still no clue as to the fate of my tired old hands. And so the weeks pass, with each of us weaker for it, told of in tavern tales or on the Zoom screen. Either way we fade, but we're privileged enough to buy booze, weed, pain meds of various stripes to help us on our way. Gods and goddesses, too, for the sensual body, still with its needs, running alongside its fears, a slow, noisy creak that rings us to sleep each night. How do we do it? This, then, finally, is what we step into. An awareness of something bright rolling down the horizon toward us, single headlight or supernova, the torch leading a procession of saints, clothed like our ancestors, not yet close enough to raise a hand of recognition. A wind out of the west from far off the seacoast, a tossed ship, a lost trawler emerging from the long fog of years. Through the blind sadness of mourning, grief hung like prayer flags from thin dead limbs, the honey of sunset seen through the dimness of crippled eyes. The ground steams in sunlight. High snows melt, the rivers shrink. All the living take a drink before the dryness comes, before grass browns, trees dip into their strategic reserves and slow their climbs. Not the seasonal best of times, but it keeps the immune system strong, right? No civil defense sirens, just cooling stations and skin that should stay in. Can't fight the summer, can't beat death to the door. Your dry husk body is what he's here for. If your consciousness can escape, then hey-ho and good luck. Oldmanhood. There you go. Don't know, people. It's going in some interesting directions. Yeah. And even with the thin onion skin, the folder's getting pretty thick. I started this in February, and I'm going to keep going at least until February. And then after a year, I'm going to start a new folder. I don't know that I can stop doing it now that I've started, because this guy right here, he's my buddy. He's my buddy. Now, it's been a great week for Gary Graves. Hey, Graves. Gary Graves. Mark Canny, Rochelle Hamill. There's everybody. Holly Tuttle, Lori Trout. As soon as I see a Lori Trout, then I have to raise the Lori Trout commemorative shot. I always forget the word commemorative. I always say memorial, but she's not dead. Neither am I. The Lori Trout commemorative shot with the Country Music Hall of Fame shot glass. The only shot glass I got. If I had more shot glass, you know what I'm saying. Ooh, thank you, Brother Jack. And to wash it down, poetry breaks for everybody. Joseph Webb, Katie Molesky sent this cup. Back in the old treehouse days. Okay, the mailbag is chock-a-block, people. Chock-a-block. What can I tell you? I'd already picked out a bunch of stuff, and then today a bunch of new stuff came in, which I am not even going for. My friend Jim Page sent a poem, and Jim, I'm going to save that for next week. You'll understand why as we move through. A lot of people were responding to the fact that I've been wanting to read poetry by women, and so that's good. That's good. So I'm going to start with the hand. She said, I don't know if this would be considered poetry, but I consider it poetry, and I'll tell you, I consider it poetry as well. So this is something that she saw on the interwebs that she thought was originally attributed to Judi Dench, but then was corrected by the person who had posted it to be the author's actually Donna Ashworth Words. Donna Ashworth Words. Now, if her last name is Words, I got to think. That's a fortuitous thing. Here's what it says. Don't prioritize your looks, my friend, as they won't last the journey. Your sense of humor, though, will only get better with age. Your intuition will grow and expand like a majestic cloak of wisdom. Your ability to choose your battles will be fine-tuned to perfection. Your capacity for stillness, for living in the moment, will blossom. Your desire to live each and every moment will transcend all other wants. Your instinct for knowing what and who is worth your time will grow and flourish like ivy on a castle wall. Don't prioritize your looks, my friend. They will change forevermore. That pursuit is one of such sadness and disappointment. Prioritize the uniqueness that makes you you, and the invisible magnet that draws in other like-minded souls to dance in your orbit. These are the things which will only get better. Did you hear that? Hoo-wee! I'm going to read it again. It's really good. I don't know, is this poetry? I think it's poetry. Donna Ashworth words. Don't prioritize your looks, my friend, as they won't last the journey. Your sense of humor, though, will only get better with age. Your intuition will grow and expand like a majestic cloak of wisdom. Your ability to choose your battles will be fine-tuned to perfection. Your capacity for stillness, for living in the moment, will blossom. Your desire to live each and every moment will transcend all other wants. Your instinct for knowing what and who is worth your time will grow and flourish like ivy on a castle wall. Don't prioritize your looks, my friend. They will change forevermore. That pursuit is one of much sadness and disappointment. Prioritize the uniqueness that make you you, the uniquenesses that make you you, and the invisible magnet that draws in other like-minded souls to dance in your orbit. These are the things that will only get better. Yes, yes, ma'am. Well said, well said. Thank you, Hand, for sending that in. Theo, from the Couth. Theo. Pauline Jones. Hey, Pauline. Cool. Mary Becca in the house. Excellent. Theo. Theo, I want to say something to you, if you're out there. I've known you, for 10 years? Obliquely? I don't know how to pronounce your last name yet. I knew a guy in the Methow Valley named Steve Bashevsky. Bashevsky. But his name was spelled, it looked like Zebzewski, but it was actually pronounced Bashevsky. So Theo, remind me the next time I see you, how do I say your last name so I can stop saying Theo from the Couth Buzzard? Although the Couth Buzzard is a nice place, and I want to point that out. And speaking of buzzards, I think there's one circling overhead looking for dry bones in the... It's the Hand, ladies and gentlemen! The Hand! The Hand is barely... a little shy tonight, Hand? Hand and forearm. It's the forearm, ladies and gentlemen. Whoa, hold on. I got it. No problem. The fluttering heartbeat of the Hand. Oh, yes. Scott and Rhonda Higgins in the house. I think Rhonda's home. Is Rhonda home? I hope. Cindy Snyder. Holly and Kim. The Lame Cat Ranchers. Chief Wranglers, they're on. Theo is here from the Couth. Theo. Dzielak. There's got to be a pronouncer. There's got to be a pronouncer in there sometime. I mean, it's been 10 years. I should know how to say your last name. Holly Trout Cooper, Finn Livingston, Sherry Vernon. What a sweetheart. Gary Graves. Another sweetheart. Big kiss on the lips for Gary Graves. Lori Trout, Mark Kenny, Rick Lewis, Rochelle, Henry, Pauline, and Aaron. Yeah, man. All the all-stars are here. All the big-name people. Big names. That's right. So, Theo said this. You mentioned that you would like to hear more poetry by women, so I flipped through my mind's catalog of favorite women poets and thought of Kim Addonizio. I don't know if I'm saying that name right either. Kim Addonizio. Now, this is a name I have heard. I'm talking to his bill now. For 20, 30 years, have I ever read any of her stuff? It's like the names get lost in the filing system. Anyway, Theo actually went through. What stands out to me is that she is one of the few women poets I know who openly explores female lust. Anyway, here are two of my favorites. As always, take care, my friend Theo. Thank you, Theo. So, a couple of poems by Kim Addonizio. 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 Yeah. Kim Addonizio. This one's called First Kiss. Afterwards, you had that drunk, drugged look my daughter used to get when she had let go of my nipple, her mouth gone slack and her eyes turned vague and filmy, as though behind them the milk was rising up to fill her whole head. That would loll on the small white stalk of her neck, so I would have to hold her closer, amazed at the sheer power of satiety, which was nothing like the needing to be fed, the wild flailing and crying until she fastened herself to me and made the seal tight between us and sucked, drawing the liquid down and out of my body. No, this was the crowning moment, this giving of herself, knowing she could show me how helpless she was. That's what I saw that night when you pulled your mouth from mine and leaned back against a chain-link fence in front of a burned-out church, a man who was going to be that vulnerable, that easy and impossible to hurt. That's from a book called What Is This Thing Called Love, which came out in 2004 by Addonizio. I want to read that again. I'm sorry. There's more and we're moving, but I got to read that again just for my own. I just want to taste it in my mouth again. I know that look when the child unlatches from the breast. And just that kind of... Okay. First kiss. Afterwards, you had that drunk, drugged look my daughter used to get when she had let go of my nipple, her mouth gone slack and her eyes turned vague and filmy, as though behind them the milk was rising up to fill her whole head. That would loll on the small white stalk of her neck, so I would have to hold her closer, amazed at the sheer power of satiety, which was nothing like the needing to be fed, the wild flailing and crying until she fastened herself to me and made the seal tight between us and sucked, drawing the liquid down and out of my body. No, this was the crowning moment, this giving of herself, knowing she could show me how helpless she was. That's what I saw that night when you pulled your mouth from mine and leaned back against a chain-link fence in front of a burned-out church, a man who was going to be that vulnerable, that easy and impossible to hurt. Yeah. Another one by Addonizio. It's called What Do Women Want? I want a red dress. I want it flimsy and cheap. I want it too tight. I want to wear it until someone tears it off me. I want it sleeveless and backless, this dress, so no one has to guess what's underneath. I want to walk down the street past Thrifty's and the hardware store with all those keys glittering in the window, past Mr. and Mrs. Wong selling the day-old donuts in their cafe, past the Guerra brothers slinging pigs from the truck and onto the dolly, hoisting the slick snouts over their shoulders. I want to walk like I'm the only woman on earth and I can take my pick. I want that red dress bad. I want it to confirm your worst fears about me, to show you how little I care about you or anything except what I want. When I find it, I will pull that garment from its hanger like I'm choosing a body to carry me into this world through the birth cries, the love cries too, and I'll wear it like bones, like skin. It'll be the goddamn dress they bury me in. I'm sorry. That's really good. So, Theo, thank you. I don't know. Theo, I would ask you, what is the male equivalent? I don't believe there is one, which is one of the things that makes this stuff so fascinating to me, why I want to read more poetry by women, because I don't know where the equivalencies are there. You know? I've never felt it. I've never felt any feeling like I want the little black dress or the little red dress or whatever. I've never had that. So that's one of the things that keeps me kind of wondering and exploring that, you know? It's like Crazy Town. Crazy Town people. Bridget Lacey. She and I are in the Westminster Basement Study Group together. Have been for... How long has that been going on? I don't know. Janine Boggs, hi there. Cuz, how you doing? Yes, sir. Sorry, checking out the names there. Can't read the comments, but Bridget Lacey sent. She just said a really good poem in her message. So, and it is a really good poem. It's by Maggie Smith. It's called Good Bones, and it goes like this. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short and the world is at least halfway terrible. And for every kind of stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor, walking you through a real shithole, chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. Read that again. The Tim Swigert Memorial rereading. Good Bones by Maggie Smith. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Bridget. Okay, so now a discovery that I made when I think I was downloading the poems that Theo had sent from the Poetry Foundation website, where if you have not been to the Poetry Foundation website, ladies and gentlemen, well, that's where it's all housed. You know, that's why I say if you send me a title and an author, or, you know, I can find the poem, because places like the Poetry Foundation website, just an endless resource. Not only of poetry, but of articles about the poets, articles by the poets, you know, articles about, you know. It's an amazing magazine, been around forever. And you see the mailbag. So Theo's poems sent me, and I found a poet named Diane Seuss, who I had never heard of before. Diane Seuss. No relation to the good doctor. His name was Theodore Geisel, I believe. This is Diane Seuss. Song in My Heart is the first one. If there's pee on the seat, it's my pee. Battery's dead, I killed it. Canary at the bottom of the cage, I bury it. Like God, tromping the sky with in his undershirt, carrying his brass spittoon, raging and sobbing in his hush puppy house slippers, and the backs broke down, and no Mrs. God to make him reasonable as he gets out the straight razor to slice the hair off his face, using the Black Sea as a mirror when everyone knows the Black Sea is a terrible mirror, like God is a terrible simile for me. But I like God with his mirror. I use it. Song in My Heart by Diane Seuss. If there's pee on the seat, it's my pee. Battery's dead, I killed it. Canary at the bottom of the cage, I bury it. Like God, tromping the sky in his undershirt, carrying his brass spittoon, raging and sobbing in his hush puppy house slippers with the backs broke down. No Mrs. God to make him reasonable as he gets out his straight razor to slice the hair off his face, using the Black Sea as a mirror when everyone knows the Black Sea is a terrible mirror, like God's a terrible simile for me, but I like God with his mirror. I use it. Who knew Diane Seuss even existed? This is called Backyard Song, again by Diane Seuss. I love this one. This is the first one I saw. Backyard Song. Since it's just me here, I've found the back and stayed there most of the time, in rain and snow and the no-moon nights, dodging the front. I used to put up like a yard, gussied and groomed, all edged and flower-lined, my bottled life. Uncorked, I had a thought. I want the want I dreamed of wanting once, a quarter cup of sneak peek at what prowls in the back, at what sings in the wet rag space behind the garage, back where the rabbits nest, where I smell something soupish, sour and dank, and it's filled with weeds like rough cat tongues, and the wind is unfostered, untended, now that it's just me here, and I am so hungry for the song that grows tall like a weed, grows and grows. When I was a little girl, my ma said a woman gets tired and sick of the front yard, of kissing the backside of a rose. I just love that so much. Kissing the backside of a rose. You know, the front yard is like the public yard, the yard that's there for the neighbors, not for ourselves. The backyard, that's our space. But the front yard, that's showbiz. It's showbiz. It's like the old version of social media. The original social media, the original Facebook page. Front yards. Don't you think? With the fences, the strategic shrubs, shrubs. Cutting the whole thing. I'm like, hey. Diane Seuss. Makes it worth another shot. I'm sorry. Goodness gracious. I am just amazed at what being immersed in poetry is doing for me, Now, Mary Pekka. Hello, Mary. Hayden Reese is in the house. Kevin Castle's in the house. Hey, Kevin. I got your stuff next week. I'll do it next week, I promise. Just came in a little too late. I was saying earlier, stuff that comes in on Tuesday afternoon, it's like I don't throw this thing together that last minute. And don't get me wrong, I want to keep this casual. And right now it's in this really sweet space where I'm reading stuff all week. Stuff is coming in during the week, and I'm like, yeah. And themes start to emerge, Themes start to emerge. And I've been wanting to read more poetry by women, and people have been responding to that. I love it. So Mary Pekka said this. Here's one for you. One of my favorites, and you made me think of it when you mentioned Tess a few weeks back. The Hug by Tess Gallagher. My ultimately favorite Tess Gallagher poem of all time. Now, I was reading Raymond Carver a few weeks back, who was married to Tess Gallagher. They lived up in Port Townsend together. So The Hug. Thank you, Mary, for reminding me of this poem. I had forgotten about it. I would have found it. I would have found it eventually. But probably not in time. I would have found it eventually, but probably not in time. The hug. A woman is reading a poem in the street, and another woman stops to listen. We stop too, with our arms around each other. The poem is being read and listened to out here in the open. Behind us, no one is entering or leaving the houses. Suddenly a hug comes over me, and I am giving it to you, like a variable star shooting light off to make itself comfortable, then subsiding. I finish but keep on holding you. A man walks up to us, and we know he has not come out of nowhere, but if he could, he would have. Sorry. He looks homeless because of how he needs. Can I have one of those? He asks you, and I feel you nod. I am surprised. Surprised you don't tell him how it is, that I am yours, only yours, etc., inclusive as a nose to its face. Love, that's what we're talking about. Love that nabs you with its for me only and holds on. So I walk over to him and I put my arms around him and try to hug him like I mean it. He's got an overcoat on so thick I can't feel him past it. I'm starting to hug and thinking, how big a hug is this supposed to be? How long shall I hold this hug? Already we could be eternal. His arms falling over my shoulders, my hands not meeting behind his back. He is so big. I put my head into his chest and snuggle in. I lean into him. I lean my blood and my wishes into him. He stands for it. This is his, and he's starting to give it back so well. I know he's getting it. This hug, so truly, so tenderly. We stop having arms, and I don't know if my lover has walked away or what, or if the woman is still reading the poem, or the houses. What about them? The houses. Clearly, a little permission is a dangerous thing. But when you hug someone, you want it to be a masterpiece of connection. The way the button on his coat will leave the imprint of a planet on my cheek when I walk away, when I try to find some place to go back to. I gotta read that again. I'm sorry. That's just the hug. A woman is reading a poem on the street, and another woman stops to listen. We stop too, with our arms around each other. The poem is being read and listened to out here in the open. Behind us, no one is entering or leaving the houses. Suddenly a hug comes over me, and I am giving it to you, like a variable star shooting light off to make itself comfortable, then subsiding. I finish, but keep on holding you. A man walks up to us, and we know he has not come out of nowhere, but if he could, he would have. He looks homeless because of how he needs. Can I have one of those? He asks you, and I feel you nod, and am surprised you don't tell him how it is, that I am yours, only yours, etc., exclusive as a nose to its face. Love. That's what we're talking about. Love that nabs you with for me only and holds on. So I walk over to him and I put my arms around him and try to hug him like I mean it. He's got an overcoat on so thick I can't feel him past it. I am starting the hug and thinking, how big a hug is this supposed to be? How long shall I hold this hug? Already we could be eternal. His arms falling over my shoulders, my hands not meeting behind his back. He is so big. I put my head into his chest and snuggle in. I lean into him. I lean my blood and my wishes into him. He stands for it. This is his, and he's starting to give it back so well. I know he's getting it. This hug. So truly, so tenderly, we stop having arms, and I don't know if my lover has walked away or what, or if the woman is still reading the poem or the houses. What about them, the houses? Clearly, a little permission is a dangerous thing. But when you hug someone, you want it to be a masterpiece of connection. The way the button on his coat will leave the imprint of a planet on my cheek when I walk away, when I try to find some place to go back to. All right. See, that's mailbag. Mailbag, folks. It's already 7:40, and that was all mailbag. And there's more mailbag coming, because I got like 4 new messages this afternoon. They were all like after 3 o'clock. Come on, people, what do you think? I'm just throwing this thing together at the last minute or something? Maybe it looks like that. Maybe it looks like that. Yeah, maybe it does. Nah, I wouldn't blame you if you think that's what's the truth. But anyway, I want to close tonight with some Joy Harjo. Talk about powerful poetry by a woman whose poetry I've loved for many, many times. Many, many years, ever since, she had some horses. But this is came out in 2014. When did this come out? No, this is more recent than that. This is while she was Poet Laureate. Yeah, 2019, so 2 years ago. Joy Harjo, I think, is in her second term as our United States Poet Laureate. If she isn't still the Poet Laureate, I haven't heard who the new one is. And this poem, or this book, came out right around the same time as this book, which is one I have yet to dive into, which is When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through, a Norton anthology of Native Nations poetry, edited by Joy Harjo and a bunch of other people, which I am, I've dipped into this a few times. So this book came out 2019, this book came out 2020. The amount of poetry that I have yet to explore is like it would be intimidating if it wasn't just such a joy to think about. Okay, where was I? I took out my... So this is a great book, and it's like a progression of poems. It's like a sequence, a mixture of narrative and poetry, prose and poetry. It's a work unto itself. It's one piece, but it's. Am I saying that right? I want to start with the epigrammatic piece of prose that she put at the beginning of this book. On May 28, 1830, President Andrew Jackson unlawfully signed the Indian Removal Act to force move southeastern peoples from our homelands to the west. We were rounded up with what we could carry. We were forced to leave behind houses, printing presses, stores, cattle, schools, pianos, ceremonial grounds, tribal towns, churches. We witnessed immigrants walking into our homes with their guns, Bibles, household goods, and families taking what had been ours as we were surrounded by soldiers and driven away like livestock at gunpoint. There were many trails of tears of tribal nations all over North America, of indigenous peoples who were forcibly removed from their homelands by government forces. The indigenous peoples who are making their way up from the southern hemisphere are a continuation of the Trail of Tears. May we all find our way home. All right. Where do we start? Where was I? Where did I have my... Oh, I lost my bookmark. That's what happened. Give me just a moment here. Darn it. There. Yes. Okay. So prose, poetry, prose poetry. I'm going to read three poems and a couple of pieces of prose that kind of connect the poems together in this book. And it's an interweaving all the way through, and it's masterful. You can understand why Joy Harjo is our United States Poet Laureate. It was only like probably 13, 14 years ago that I even started paying attention to who our U.S. Poet Laureate was. I think it was solidified when Philip Levine became the U.S. Poet Laureate. In 1990, a Congress of Indigenous Peoples met outside of Quito, Ecuador, to discuss the Colombian Quincentenary, a celebration of immigrant population of the arrival of Christopher Columbus to the Western Hemisphere on his financed expedition to find a trade route to India. Tribal people came from all the Americas and met to discuss the destructive and monumental changes since the European explorers' arrival. We met together to gain insight and strength and ponder how we would continue to move forward past the massive destruction and disrespect of the earth, mind, body, and spirit, and to continue our sovereignty as native nations. In the women's circle, a striking Bolivian Indian woman in a bowler hat stood up. She welcomed us. She noted that she was surprised at all of the natives attending from the United States. "I thought John Wayne had killed all of you." This was not a joke. "And why," she asked, "do you call yourselves America? This hemisphere is one body, one person. She is America." This is called Weapons, or What I Have Taken in My Hand to Speak When I Have No Words. Inspired by T.C. Cannon's Images. I have not seen T.C. Cannon's Images. This is Weapons, or What I Have Taken in My Hand to Speak When I Have No Words. Black. Before there was anything else possible, we settled there, not far from the river, at the ragged edge of night. There were no words for eyes or light or even being. Imagination took its first breath while we were camped there in the nowhere. Yellow. We struck up a conversation. Somebody opened their hands with food. The drum brought forth the language of the earth. An elder woman's voice urged the stars out of their houses to come dance with us. A young man followed with a new song that brought excitement to the young women wrapped in shawls who were dancing and brought forth ancestors who danced with us. Red. Each of us is a wave in the river of humanity. If we break, we bleed out. If we move forward together, we are bound together by scarlet waters of belief. One side is war, one side feeds the generations. We are bright with the need for life. Green. After winter snow, after you left, after giving up, after the planting, after letting the horses free to roam, after the loving, after yes, never no. The grasses rise up from the earth to answer the winds in song. After I rise up with this shimmering love to sing. Blue. If you really love me, sweetheart, you would not forsake me here at the dawn of forever. I will always love you, always, sang the sky to eternity. I will meet you there at the seamless edge of sunrise. The Story Wheel. I leave you to your ceremony of grieving, which is also of celebration, given when an honored, humble one leaves behind a trail of happiness in the dark of human tribulation. None of us is above the other in this story of forever. though we follow that red road home, one behind another. There is a light breaking through the storm, and it is buffalo hunting weather. There you can see your mother. She is busy as she was ever. She holds up a new jingle dress for her youngest beloved daughter, and for her special son a set of finely beaded gear. All for that welcome home dance, the most favorite of all, when everyone finds their way back together to dance, eat, and celebrate, and tell story after story of how they fought and played in the story wheel, and how no one was ever really lost at all. Until the passage of the Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, it was illegal for Native citizens to practice their cultures. Until the passage of the Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, it was illegal for Native citizens to practice our cultures. This included the making and sharing of songs and stories. Songs and stories in one culture are poetry and prose in another. They are intrinsic to cultural sovereignty. To write or create as a native person was essentially illegal. Washing my mother's body. I never got to wash my mother's body after she died. I returned to take care of her in memory. That's how I make peace when things are left undone. I go back and open the door. I step in to make my ritual, to do what should have been done, what needs to be fixed so that my spirit can move on, so that the children and grandchildren are not caught in a knot of regret they do not understand. I find the white enamel pan she used for bread and biscuits. It is the same pan she used to bathe me when we were babies. I turn the faucet on and hold my hand under the water until it is warm, the temperature one uses to wash an infant. I find a clean washcloth and a stack of washcloths. She had nothing in her childhood. She made sure that she had plenty of everything when she grew up and made her own life. Her closets were full of pretty dresses. So many she had not time to wear them all. They were bought by the young girl who wore the same flower sack dress to school every day, the one she had to wash out every night and hang up to dry near the wood stove. I pick up the bar of soap from her sink, the same soap she used yesterday morning to wash her face. When she looked in the mirror, did she know it would be her last sunrise? I move over pill boxes, a clock radio on the table by the bed, a pen, and set down the pan. I straighten the blankets over her to keep her warm, for dignity. I start with her face. Her face is unlined even 2 months before her 80th birthday. She was known for her beauty, and when younger passed for the Cherokee when she was through her mother and her mother's mother all the way back to time's beginning. My mother had the iron pot given to her by her Cherokee mother, whose mother gave it to her, given to her by the U.S. government on the Trail of Tears. She grew flowers in it. As I wash my mother's face, I tell her how beautiful she is, how brave, how her beauty and bravery live on in her grandchildren. Her face is relaxed, peaceful. Her earth memory body has not left yet. But when I see her the next day, embalmed and in the casket in the funeral home, it will be gone. Where does it go? Is it heavier than the spirit who lifted up and flew? It is heavier than the spirit who lifted up and flew. I think of it making the rounds to every place it has loved to say goodbye. Goodbye to the house where I brought my babies home. Okay. Goodbye to the house where I brought my babies home, she sings. Goodbye to June's bar where I was the shuffleboard queen. I cannot say goodbye yet. I will never say goodbye. I lift up each arm to wash. Her hands still wear her favorite rings. She loved her body and decorated it with shiny jewelry, with creams and makeup. I am tender over that burn scar on her arm from when she cooked at the place where the cruel boss, who insisted she reach her hand into the friolator to clean it. She had protested it was still hot, and he suffered a deep burn. That scar always reminded me of her coming in from working long hours in restaurants, her uniform drenched with sweat, determination, and exhaustion. Once she came home and I was burning up with a fever. She pulled out the same pan I am dipping the washcloth in now, only she added rubbing alcohol to bring down the fever. She washes tenderly, tells me how her friend Chunky left her husband again, how she knows her old boss, a Jewish woman who treated her kindly, has cancer. She doesn't know how she knows, but she knows. She doesn't tell me that. I find it in a journal she has left me, a day book in which she has written notes for me to find when she is gone. I wash her neck and lift the blankets to move down to her heart. I thank her body for carrying us through the tough story, through the violence of my father and her second husband. Her mother's mother died when she was born, and her adoptive mother, another Cherokee woman, had no love in her heart for a tiny girl whose light hair betrayed her Indianness. Unlike the baby's older, darker sister, who would stay within their circle. Because her mother was not there for her, my grandmother did not know how to mother my mother. The story is all there, in her body, as I wash her to prepare her to be let down into earth and return all stories to the earth. My body memories rise up as I wash. I recall carrying my 2 children, rocking them and feeding them from my body. How I knew myself as beloved earth in that body. I uncover my mother's legs. I remember the varicose veins that swelled like rivers when my mother would get off a long shift of standing and cooking. They carried more than a woman should carry. A woman should be honored like a queen. Traditionally, we treated our women with that kind of respect, my Creek husband tells me. Ha! I laugh and ask him, then why aren't you cooking my dinner? I wash her feet, caress them. You will have some rest now, I tell my mother. Even as I know my mother was never one for resting, I cover her. I make the final ring of the washcloth and drape it over the pan. I brush my mother's hair and kiss her forehead. I ask the keepers of the journey to make sure her travel is safe and sure. I ask the angels, whom she loved and with whom she spoke frequently, to take her home, but wait, not before I find her favorite perfume. Then I sing her favorite song, softly. I don't know the name of the song, just a few phrases, one of those old homemade heartbreak songs, where there's a moment of happiness wound through, and then I let her go. there you go, folks. That's what I had prepared for tonight. Yes, indeed, Rooney. Just about an hour. Sorry, I'm trying to compress adequately, but man, I knew I had to. I knew. The crickets are telling us it's time to go. I knew I had to end with Joy Harjo, and I'm going to dip into this, and this is going to be. It's going to be fun. I also am going to give Amy Clampett. Amy Clampett. The Kingfisher is not a very famous book for nothing. So I refuse to believe that there's nothing in there under the surface of Amy Clampett. I just am not, mature enough. I'm not, I don't know. I'm just not ready for it on some level. But we'll find it. Maybe we'll find it together. Thanks to everybody who's written in. Thanks to Theo. Thanks to Diane. Thanks to Bridget. Thanks, who else? Who else sent poetry this week? I'm sorry, Diane, Theo, yeah, Bridget, yeah, Mary Pekka. Sorry, Mary Pekka. And then Diane Seuss. Check out Diane Seuss. She's got a poem, or a book called Frank Sonnets that I ordered. And I was like, because I saw that it won the Pulitzer Prize this year for poetry. Well, I thought that's probably a book worth having, and then while I was waiting for that, I went to the poetry site and found those 2 poems I read. And then my writing seems to be just kind of happening on a very organic level right now, and I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to jinx it. Everybody have a poetic week, okay? We'll do this again next week. Next week's going to be special. I hope you'll stick around for it. Thank you, everybody. Good night.